Hello, everybody. We were like, there's something wrong. It's not going live. And then, whoa, we're live.
And then
So,
we're like,
so excited today to be having the amazing Dan Ulin joining me, all the way from the US of A. And happy Thanksgiving to anybody who is watching live. And Dan and I had the pleasure of meeting Dan in March of this year in a mastermind room in Boston. And we just really, really hit it off as soon as we met. It is absolutely fascinating the work that he does with his students, the work that he does with these really exceptional kids that it really, really sparked an interest in me. And, I'm a mummy, I've got two little ones, so my kids are only 5 and 3, but it really opened my eyes to their future and the path that is before them. And really, Dan has made me think long and hard about the choices we are going to make as parents and how we're choosing to rear our children and how we can ultimately make sure that they end up where they are meant to be. And Dan is the founder and CEO of Elite Student Coach. So he's a really, really talented educational consultant with an unbelievably remarkable track record of 98% when it comes to enabling his mentees to gain admission to at least one of their top 3 choices of the prestigious colleges and graduate schools. But kids getting into these really highly selective institutions is a byproduct of the work that he does rather than the end product of his one-to-one program. He works with these kids for years and years and years and really empowers them to become world-class communicators, showcase and monetize their talents, and master the art of mentoring others whilst also kind of crushing it at school, work, and life. So he's been doing this for over 40 years. Sounds like he's been doing it for longer than I have been alive because I'm only 43. So this is like
well,
somebody who
since you were at least
deeply, deeply, deeply ingrained in this work. He is a communication expert, a mental health professional, and has worked with thousands of super ambitious kids. Has worked all over the world. I could go on and on and on about his resume and how phenomenal he is. But I really wanted to just welcome you, Dan. If you're watching this, just like let us know, drop the word parents down below, just so we can kind of get a feel for the people who are interested in this topic from Dan. And essentially, Dan, it's really for teens. Would that be right? Like earlier,
yes.
early,
Well,
yeah,
adolescents and teens, but I
yeah,
also work with 20 somethings. I actually work with kids as young as 8 and as old as 29. But the
yes.
heavy cluster is in that adolescents and
Yes,
teens.
and I think the bit that before I get into kind of the official questions that I'm going to ask, I have this kind of intriguing thing about you, what you do, because as a parent, we all think that our little special snowflake is the most special human being on planet Earth, and you only really work with these really elite kids. So, how does a parent know that their little Johnny is actually a really elite kid versus just their little darling? That's kind of the biggest bit that jumps out to me, just to kind of jump off this conversation.
No, it's a great question. So here's the secret. Hold on, let me lean in. You want to know what the secret is? If you're to know if your child is an elite kid, if their
Mhm.
lips are moving and they're a carbon-based life form and they smile and they're your child, they're an elite kid. That's the
Okay,
answer.
okay.
All
So
children, all children have greatness within them. It's just a
Mhm.
question of unlocking that and unleashing it. That's it.
So every kid has this potential to be absolutely phenomenal, regardless of their background, regardless of their academic abilities, all of those kinds of things. And it's about capturing the magic of each child so that they can fulfill their potential. Is that
Absolutely.
have I nailed it? Okay, brilliant. So you work with a lot of these kids that have all the grades, the test scores, the extracurriculars, and this one kind of reminded myself of me as a child. So you ticked every single box, but you say sometimes that they're essentially invisible to these admission officers. So how does that work? What is actually missing? How can kids who are ticking every single box stand out from the crowd and truly, truly kind of live into that potential?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Maeve. So again, I'm Dan Ulin, and I'm originally from Boston, where Maeve and I met, but I've been living in Los Angeles for a long time, by way of Osaka and Paris and a lot of other places. I've had an unusual experience as an American living in 6 countries and working in another 40 or so. But I'm a mentor for truly exceptional kids. I only work one-on-one, so this isn't a group coaching program. But every kid is exceptional in his or her own way, in their own way. And so, look, if marketing is about being, I'll boil down that my fancy marketing MBA, the real basics. If marketing is about being first, better, or different, your child won't be the first child applying to college. I don't know who that was. Johnny College in the year 1702 or something. Better, what's better? A brilliant marketer like Maeve, who loves horses and is a talented chef, or a kid who paints and throws clay and also happens to be a javelin player. You can't. It's apples and oranges. You can't compare those. So first and better, that you can't, but you can always be different. And the ultimate in being different is being the only, that category of one. And I think what happens here in the United States, it's different in Europe. We're talking American schools right now, American colleges.
Yeah.
What happens is that kids want to stand out. They want to stand out, but very often, and we're in the thick of the admissions season right now here in the United States. Early decision is passed now in the regular decision stage. Kids want to stand out, but they become afraid of doing so, and they, for a lot of different reasons. And so, rather than trying to become that category of one, and some do, and I work with my mentees to make sure that they do, they throttle back and say, rather than my coming off as weird to the admissions officer, I'm just going to compete on the basis of my fantastic grades and my fantastic test scores, and that admissions officer is going to just see the greatness within me and let me in. And it's a losing proposition, because there are, and I'm not just talking about the Harvards and the Penns and the Whartons and the Stanfords. I'm talking about all schools. I'm of the opinion it's not where you go, it's about how you show up where you go. But let's just use those top 50 to 100 schools just as an example, because that's the very high bar to which, and then here in California, the UCs, which are sort of the obvious of the West Coast. Outstanding people stand out, and you want to stand out in a very sort of specific way. Now, the earlier your children are quite young, but the earlier you start, the better off you are. And Michelangelo talked about, he carved away. It's usually attributed to the David, but I think it was the Pieta. He carved away everything that wasn't. I carved away everything that wasn't the Pieta. And that's when I'm fortunate enough to work with kids where there's a longer runway. Again, the longer the runway, the bigger the plane you can take off. I can help those kids. I can empower those kids to try out things that are different. There's nothing wrong. I call it the Holy Five, because here in the United States, the Holy Five activities that a ton of kids engage in are classical piano, violin, soccer, or football, as it would be called on the continent. Piano, violin, that tennis, and debate. And those are fantastic activities. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. I'm a pianist. I love those things. But hundreds of thousands of kids do those. And so
you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah. And so you want to stand out from the crowd. Now, it's very possible to do those in very original ways. One of my mentees, she's so fantastic. She's a gamer. She plays video games, which already puts her as an outlier, because gaming is very heavily male focused. But she, about 2 years ago, said, "Hey, Dan, I'd love to combine video game music with classical music." She's a very highly trained pianist. She's played Carnegie Hall. Can I do that? And I said, "You don't need my permission. Just do it." So she fused. She created this mishmash of video game music and classical music. And do you see how unique that is? It's such a beautiful thing. It's just fantastic. And she's in the process of applying right now. But sometimes it's just the simplest things that will make you stand out.
Yeah, because I think, to me, like, what I am liking in this too right now, like as you're talking about it, is I swear I got my very first job in corporate because I used to be a steeplechase jockey. So whenever I finished my master's, I went into Ernst & Young, and every kid had first class honors. Every kid had straight A's on their CV. Every kid did all of the fancy things. And one of the partners that was interviewed, I can't even remember his name. I think his name was Michael at the time. He interviewed me, and he was like, "You used to be a steeplechase jockey," and I was like, yeah, like, as though it was nothing. And I swear, because the entire interview then ended up being about horse racing. They barely asked me about the job or anything else.
Yeah.
He kind of quickly said at the end, were you happy enough to do your accountancy exams? And I was like, yeah. And then I ended up like studying for the next number of years, completely unintentionally. But I think it's like things like that, and it's the same at the uni level then, not just in the workplace. When you're hiring people, it's exactly the same principle. It's like, what makes you unique from every other kid that plays the violin, and every other kid that has, straight A's, and every other kid that has all of these perfect attributes. It's like, what actually makes you stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, no, I mean, you really nailed it too. And the other thing too, I mean, I think this is true when it comes to jobs as well. But let's just use university and college, which
Mm-hmm.
again, it's a byproduct of what I do. This is a mentorship program, and my undergrad degree was in creative writing, and then years later, I went back for an MBA, which is the last thing I thought I would ever do. And then many years later, I went back for a master's in clinical psychology, and put all of those together. That, my performing arts experience, improvisation, the international marketing together in this unique program. It wasn't that I looked at the other people whom I really respect in the college admissions space and did some fancy BCG matrix or a SWOT analysis and said, they're doing it this way, I'm going to do it, my own. I just don't know another way to do it. And so I became that category of one more by accident than by intent. But we all have our own way of becoming that category of one. And again, my job is to do that. So in a mentor, one of my heroes in psychology, Carl Rogers, said the secret to becoming a great psychiatrist was to hold his patient in unconditional positive regard. And so that's what I do with my mentees. And I know that whether I'm dealing with my 8-year-old, I don't have children of my own. So when I say my kids, I'm talking about the kids in my tribe. I know that the mentorship relationship with my kids is going really well when 6 or 7 sessions in, they can turn to me and say, hey, Dan, that work we've been doing together so far, that's great. But that observation you had about me, you are dead wrong. And it's awesome, because what does that do? That makes me a better mentor for them. That models the behavior, positive behavior for them that they can then take into the world when they are mentoring other people. There are sort of 3, for lack of a better term, pillars to my program. One is that I empower all of the kids in my ecosystem to become just boss communicators in everything that means, on paper, in person, persuasion, negotiation, emotional intelligence, all of it. The second is that all of the kids with whom I work, whom I mentor, I teach how to mentor. I teach them how to mentor other people. And the third is that I teach them all principles of entrepreneurship. I don't think any kid should go to college without the basics of how to run a business or how to start a business. Almost all of my kids start a business. Most of them start some form of a workshop-based business where they take something they like and they run a half day, full day, or 2 or 3 day workshop. It can be anything they want. Some of them make a lot of money doing it. Some of them do it on a pro bono basis. Some of them give money away to charity. But this folds together all 3 things. It's a market, mentor, monetize thing, and it's very, very simple to do. I'm of the opinion that just do something as simply as possible. But the reason that I pull these things together in this way is that none of these skills, communicating like a boss, learning how to mentor others, and entrepreneurship, none of these are taught, at least in the United States, at the middle school or high school level. And even if you go to a Wharton undergrad here in the United States or a Babson in Boston, you're not going to get those until your second year. They're monetizable in any field. If you go into medicine or you go into entrepreneurship or you go into engineering, no matter what it is, you can use those. And the third is that they're AI proof. I read, I think you and I talked about this when we were in Boston, but I read another article recently that said AI is not going to take your job. It's somebody who knows how to use AI that's going to take your job. And I thought it was a fascinating thing. And this conversation you and I are having, I mean, I had met you through a group that we're in together before, but the time you and I spent in Boston, where we really had that a lot of fun in that crazy meal in the North End, that delicious Italian meal. These one-to-one, personal exchanges, these emotional exchanges, kids who have those skills that I talked about, and a lot of other things too, but those are the sort of underlying principles that I work with, and can really engage with somebody else and meet people where they're at. They're going to be the ones who surf the tsunami rather than get consumed by it. And they're very easy to learn. They're very easy to cultivate. I think it's much harder in today's world to be a kid and to be a teenager, wherever you are in the world, because everything's coming at you at light speed all the time. I think it's also hard to be a parent. And so, I think 90% of the work that I do is with the kids whom I'm empowering and learning from. I'm older, I'm not wiser than the kids with whom I work. I just have more miles on my tires. So a good example would be, I learned to abandon perfectionism in my late 30s, early 40s. I hold myself to a high standard, not impossible standard, but I didn't learn that lesson until I was 40. Why not bring that to a 15-year-old, save them 25 years? If it works for them, great. If not, I will gladly refund their misery. But why not? And then they can take that to a kid they're working with who's 8 or 9 years old. So this is really paid for mentorship system. 90% in the working with my kids business, and then 10% in the maybe parental anxiety relief business. There's no one way to parent kids. There's no one way to get into school, but the wrong way is to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. So you want to find your own path.
Absolutely. And when it comes to them, when it comes to the kids themselves, is it better for them to be authentic in their interviews and in their writing and how they are showing up in the world, and like truly be their authentic self, even if there are parts of them that need polish and things like that? Or is it better to not fake until you make it? But what would your view be on that? I'm just really, really, really curious.
So just to clarify the question, be authentic in terms of when it's alumni interviews are authentic on paper and they're
Yeah, so just like a kid, like say for example you're working with somebody, they're 14 years old, and they're not a completely polished human being yet. They're just a kid. They still have like edges that possibly are going to curtail their success that they could have, if they're headed to Harvard or whatever. Is it better for them to be authentic and stay themselves with those edges, and then ultimately pay the price later? Or do how do you handle that where they're just not what those big schools need and want?
No. I mean, it's a great question. I would lean in the direction of saying be authentic. Look, schools are businesses, and so what? By the time you apply, which in the United States it's usually around the age of 17. I mean, if you were advanced to grade, maybe you're 16 if you're the youngest in your class, or maybe it's 18. It all depends. 16, 17, 18, heavily closer to 17. And schools, it is not a meritocracy. If it were a meritocracy, if we're all about getting straight A's and about getting top scores on here in the United States with the SATs or the ACTs, Harvard would have 100,000 freshmen. It's not about that. It is about standing out in a sort of unforgettable way. And there's no specific formula to it. Ultimately the admissions office is a black box, but we want to do whatever we possibly can to control the narrative that goes into that box. And a lot of that has to do with, I guess, I talk about sort of the four lion pits. One is the letters of recommendation that come from the high school teachers. There's two that come from teachers, one that comes from the high school counselor. And those can be, it depends on the teachers that you choose. And I always recommend that the teen go and self-advocate and ask the teacher, in junior year rather than the parents. It's 99% of the time it's the parents who go and ask for that at the very last minute, like the end of the movie Frankenstein. They arrive with pitchforks and torches in hand, and where's our kids letter? And they end up getting a very bland letter. Maeve was a wonderful student. Her baking soda volcano is the hit of the science fair. Go Maeve.
It's like whatever references.
Well, your baking volcano. I have seen your baking soda volcano, and it was quite something. But it doesn't say anything, as opposed to the way that Tim shows up on the football field is the same way that he shows up in class, 1,000%, because he doesn't know enough. Goes all in, and because he goes all in, that says so much about his character. I can't recommend him strongly. So that's line pit number one, talking about a kid's character. All right. The second is the core essay, which here in the United States would be the Common App, which runs across almost all the schools in the United States. MIT is on a different ecosystem. The UCs are on a different ecosystem, but same thing. The core personal statement. And in that one, I mean, you really want to be authentic. I think there's a lot of pressure to, write an essay about, how I won the big game, or lessons my grandfather taught me, or, Lady Gaga has always been an inspiration, or Paris. But guess what? Your grandfather's not applying to college, nor is Gaga. Paris isn't going to college. You are. And you want to talk about, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but you want to talk about something personal. And just like that wonderful phrase, tiny hinges swing big doors, it can be the smallest thing. So that's line pit number 2. Line pit number 3 are the supplemental essays, kind of the core essay, the core personal statement is the planet, the orbiting moons of that planet, the school specific essays. Some don't have any. Northeastern in Boston doesn't have any. University of Virginia doesn't have any, but most schools have 1 or 2 or 3, in some cases more. You want those to be, to resonate and have the sort of same tone and flavor as the core essay. And then the 4th one is the listing of the activities, which is probably the deepest and most treacherous of the line pits. Most kids end up writing that at the very last minute, as the ball is dropping on Times Square on December 31st, when the deadline is January 1st. And it'll read something like, debated on the debate team, or swam laps on the swim team, as opposed to, orchestrated, initiated, led. You don't have to dump the thesaurus out.
Yeah, so there's a way to write these well.
Yeah, I mean, you want to spend a little time. You're not writing the great American novel. If you can speak, you can write. If you can speak, you can write. And I think that writing is terrifying for a lot of kids. I mean, I think it comes easily for a lot of other ones, but these are conversations you're having with the admissions officer. These are not like school papers. And I think it's very terrifying for a lot of kids. They've never had to do these before. But again, coming back to what schools are looking for, they're building a class. They call it shaping a class. And you sort of, they're filling it up from the bottom up, and you can only past pace yourself as a 17-year-old. You only know what your life has been like up until then. But admissions officers are future pacing you. What is Sam going to be like? What's it like? What's it going to be like when Sam is on campus? What's it going to be like when he's on the Penn campus? When he brings the strengths that he has as an athlete and a painter and a scientist, when he brings those strengths? What's it going to be like when he's vulnerable and he needs to reach out to somebody else? So they are basing those on what you're presenting in the essays. And in the case of a couple of schools that allow you to do a brief video on that. And they're doing it very, very, very quickly. These schools have, thousands and thousands of applications. I'll just use UC Berkeley as an example, where they're getting nearly 150,000. It's a lot of applications. So they're consuming these very, very quickly. So, one pro tip is you want to really punch through the clutter very quickly with what it is that you say. And there are some tricks and tips for doing that, but you want to open strong. But anybody can do that. This information is readily available online. My job as a mentor, and ultimately I want to democratize the process to make this available really to everybody. But coming back to your question, every kid has got this greatness inside them. I just don't think that necessarily they're aware of that. And when they become aware of that, when they hit that home run, when they can hit that home run really easily early on in life, that light goes on and they're like, oh my gosh, I just never knew I had this. We've talked about this, you and I have seen it. When a parent sees that, they freak out.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've talked a little bit about authenticity. We've talked a little bit about admissions officers and what they need and what they want. Let's move now to confidence in the kids. So some kids are super, super confident just by nature. So like, even I'm thinking through now, my little boy, who's 5, he is about 100 years old since the day he was born. He's like a little old man. He's very gentle, very kind, super, super thoughtful. And then my daughter, who is 3, was born a complete rocket. Like, she is just, they are so opposite. She's super sassy. She's so confident. She is like, I have no concerns about her at some point running the universe. So I can see this difference in like 2 kids who have the exact same parents, and like one is super, super confident, one is super, super quiet. How do you nurture, whenever you're working with these kids, how do you nurture those who are already confident? How do you work with those who are a little bit on the shyer or the quieter side, so that they can kind of discover themselves that they are just as good in their own little way as those who are all biz and all confidence?
Another great question. Boy, you're just a festival of great questions, aren't you? It's almost as though you've done this before.
Not my first rodeo.
Right. No, it is not your first rodeo. No, confidence comes in many shapes and sizes and flavors, doesn't it? And I think that we all like to get validation from without. It's always nice when somebody says, great job on
Mhm.
this, and that feels lovely. The best source of confidence is this well that we source from within, and when we can do that, it's kind of, I'm going to go back to my Star Trek, that warp core engine. If you can build that from within and learn to source it from within, then when things come from without, it's a nice cherry on top of the sundae, but it's not really what matters. Years ago, somebody said to me, Dan, what other people think about us or say about us doesn't really matter. It's what we think. And it took a little while for that to resonate with me. We don't have any control over what other people say or think about us. All we really have control over is our side of the street and what we do and our
Mhm.
acts. We want to do our very best to show up well in the world. But to come back to your question, cultivating confidence can be done in a number of different ways. I mean, I talked about this workshop model. I don't mean to harp on it, but it's a very simple thing to do. Let's just say a kid is good at, I don't know, likes playing
Well,
soccer.
let's take Jack as an example. Okay, so let's just work
All right,
through.
let's use your child. Tell me a little bit about that.
Right. So Jack is 5. He's just in his first year of primary school now. We live on a farm, as you know, so we have a horse farm, and my husband keeps a few cattle. That's kind of his hobby. Okay, strange hobby, but okay,
Okay.
this is what they do.
Okay.
And Jack is not interested in it. He is obsessed. I mean, he lives it, eats it, sleeps it, breathes it. He feeds his calves every single morning before he goes to school.
Okay.
The only meltdowns this child ever has is if you take him off the farm or try to get him inside the house. So let's take this example. So I don't know how you're going to run a workshop on
Yeah,
cattle.
we'll work.
But so it's like, so for me, because I went through, my husband went the kind of the whole farming route. I did the whole degree, master's, accountancy, corporate career, London,
Right.
all of those things. We've come from two very, very, very different upbringings, and Jack is definitely leaning towards farm life, which is absolutely brilliant. But how
Okay.
do we? So to talk me through, from his perspective, how on earth this would work.
Okay. And give me a little bit about Jack's personality. I haven't had the
Yeah,
pleasure.
so he could talk the hind leg off a donkey when he's talking about cattle.
Oh,
He has zero interest in like ordinary little boy things like trucks and cars and
okay.
robots. Like the only thing he watches on screen are cattle marts, cattle farm videos, like and real farm, but not even like Tractor Ted, like the toy one. Is like he watches actual farm videos. He knows that he is obsessed with it. Okay, he's super not super introverted, but he's quieter, he's very gentle and super intelligent. But then probably every parent thinks that about their kid. But he's ticking all of the boxes in terms of intelligence
Okay.
as well. Yeah, and it's just like, how do you allow his life to unfold as it's meant to?
Okay.
You know,
No, it's a good question. So last question for clarification. Is he a confident kid? In your opinion, is he a confident kid or not a confident kid?
I think he's confident when he's talking about his thing. So if somebody wants to change the subject and talk about something that is not cattle, and he's not interested in talking about it, he just down tools. So it's really difficult. Like, he started school now. I'm like, you gotta like join in. Other kids, aren't really into cattle, so you'll have to talk about things that interest them, maybe like football or just like ordinary little boy things.
Got it.
So he's very confident in his own zone.
Okay. So I'm just gonna spitball this. We're just gonna work
Yeah,
work
go for it.
this
This is
real.
not where I thought this was going to go, but
Let's say that Jack, who's in his first year of primary school,
yeah.
decided to run just for fun. It's probably a little cold in the UK right now, but let's just say over the winter holidays, decided to run a confidence workshop for kids.
Mhm,
Confidence with a K for confidence for kids,
mhm,
and it's based on cattle. And he could invite a few friends over. He
yeah,
doesn't have to monetize it the first time. And his line can be, listen, I know you don't really care about cattle. You care about video games. You care about playing football.
mhm,
Hey, Sue, you like knitting. It really doesn't matter. But let me teach you about how I develop confidence, and let's see how this transfers. And let's all put on our boots, and we'll walk out, and we'll milk a cow or whatever it is. And we'll wash it or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't have a lot of experience with cows. I love animals. I just don't have a lot of.
You know
Jack,
what?
I'll come to the workshop. All right, let's just say it that way. Because ultimately, what these workshops are about, and it'd probably be a 3-hour workshop. It's always teach 3 things. I would say to Jackie, like, what are the 3 things? Well, you need to approach the cow and look in the cow's eyes and build trust. And then the next thing you need to do is wash it. And the next thing you need to do is look. I don't know what it is. 3 things, and then each thing has 3 things underneath it.
Yes.
We're
Okay.
programmed to think in threes. But
Mhm.
the reason this applies to you, he is then saying to his 3 or 4
Mhm.
friends, is that you'll become more confident when you lean into things that you're doing just by dint of learning how to then teach others how to do it. Look, ultimately, what these workshops are about, all of my kids, I would say 90% of the kids with whom I work, I call them my kids, even though I don't have any of my own,
Mhm.
run workshops in, I'll come back to Jack in a sec, in landscape painting,
Yes.
creative writing, investing. I've got 2 14-year-olds teaching 6th graders the principles of investing. One of those 6th graders turned
I love.
$50 into $700 in
Wow.
3 weeks. That is not a bad rate of return. That
I
is
love
not bad.
that.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, what these are about is that the transformation is so if my mentees are the transportation for that transformation,
Mhm.
it's not so much the subject matter. It is their mentees, my kids, mentees coming in for whatever this is, the 3-hour workshop, the full day workshop, what have you. It's not so much the subject matter. It is they're coming in, having experience with either a peer, it's that dojo model,
Mhm.
or younger. I've actually got mentees who are teaching adults as well. But let's just say
Mhm.
in Jack's case, it's to a peer,
Yeah.
and leaving feeling more confident. I had a great experience with Jack. I don't care about cows, but I had this great experience with Jack, and now I feel more confident in myself because I don't care or know about cows, but I had this great experience that was different. Here's
Mhm.
the secret sauce for the workshops. Ready? Here it comes. At the end, Jack emails the parents of the 3 kids who came and says, "Thank you so much for allowing me the pleasure of working with Sue and John and Ichiro, and it was a great pleasure. By the way, let me give you the Canva template that I was going to use to market to you, but I didn't end up using because I knew you anyway, but I would have put on mom's Insta, Instagram. Here's the Canva template. Here's my mentoring manifesto, which is just, mine or yours with his name on it. And here's the outline that I used for doing it, because there's no reason my
Mhm.
friends, your kids, shouldn't go run their own workshop
Mhm.
next week and make $100. He's going to have a wait list a mile long. And why? Because he's just taught them something very, very simple. Now, 2 things are happening there. It's that old adage about we learn something best by teaching it. The light's going to go on in his head because he already knows about cattle and about farming already. But when we explain something that we know, we learn to unpack it in ways that are
Mhm.
wildly different.
Yes.
But when he sees that light go on above the heads of the kids he's teaching, they're just going to have this incredible sense of satisfaction.
Yes.
And he's going to be building that rocket engine from within, right? He's going to be learning, he's going to be digging that well and deepening that well. And then he's also going to have that reaction when he walks in the house of you and your wonderful husband going, "Oh my God, is this my kid?" I cannot tell you how many times I get calls from parents when they've
Wow.
run workshops or they've had interviews with other people. They're like, "Dan, is this my child? Like, I've just seen this transformation. I've never seen this before." And the truth is, yes, it is. And it's, we're taught, I don't know. Here, I'll just use this paper towel as an example. We're taught that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right?
Mhm.
And again, like, that does make sense, but it's not. The shortest distance between two points is when we fold space. Is when we fold space.
Ooh.
And by running that workshop, what has Jack done? He's folded space. He's
Mhm.
taken he's taken what would take a long time. Let me learn how to run a workshop. Let me go to school for it. Let me learn how to teach something. He's just done it. He's just walked out and done it. And when he learns how to do that, and he has that instant home run, and he creates instant home runs for his
Yes.
friends,
Yes.
that folds space. He gets way ahead of the crowd. And by the way, when you're ahead of the crowd, this doesn't mean you can't reach back and pull the crowd to keep up with you. So to come back to your original question, this is how the kids in my tribe, and and hopefully they go on and teach other kids and teach other kids how to do it, get way ahead of the pack. And to admissions officers' ears, this is incredible, right? Because what does this say to admissions officers? If this kid ran workshops or showed up in the classroom this way, or this is the behavior they learned to cultivate early in life, I can only imagine how they're going to show up on campus. And by extension, how they're going to show up in the world when it comes to getting jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They
Mhm.
learn how to self-advocate. They build confidence. They build trust. They learn to meet other kids, whether they're confident or not, where they're at. Um,
Mhm.
does that help? I know you're going to go to Jack and have him run a workshop later on.
I don't, I don't know if we want to run a cattle
Well, I
workshop, but
mean, you
it
never
makes
know.
perfect. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It really does. And I think just before we wrap, the other thing I'd love to touch on is the conversation around tension. Okay, and we'll let everybody know how they can get in touch with you and all of those good things if they
Sure.
are keen to like have that conversation to see how they can ensure that their kid or their child is living to their full potential. So we'll do all of that in the end in just a couple of minutes. But before we get to that, this talk about tension where perhaps the parents maybe wanted more for the kid than the kid wants it for themselves, or
Yeah.
even sometimes vice versa. How do you handle that where you can see kind of a duality thing going on between what the parents want for their little Johnny and what the kid actually wants for themselves?
It's always little Johnny, isn't it?
It's always little Johnny.
It's always little Johnny. Uh, no, it's a fascinating question. That old, what do you want to be when you grow up? It used to be a one thing. I want to be a stockbroker. I want to be a spaceman. I want to be this. I want to be that. And then this is way before your time. This was when I was a kid. There's a book called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler that came out, and it said still a great read. 60 years later, but it said, by the turn of the century, by 2000, people are going to have multiple careers, and multiple and parallel and serial careers, and it just caused this stir. This guy is nuts. That will never happen. But that's exactly what's happening right
That's
now.
exactly what's happening.
It's what's
Yeah.
happening right now, isn't it? And then careers that used to, even a decade ago, even 5 years ago, considered separate buckets. Here's engineering, here's medicine,
Yeah.
here's comp sci, they're cross pollinating all the time. And so, you and I talked about this in Boston. I've done 20 years of work in improv. Most people think of improv as similar to stand up comedy. Stand up is a scripted act, and you get up there and you occasionally off-road it when some drunk in the crowd heckles you. But improv is just taking whatever comes your way and running with it. It's being used. I'll probably have MI5 knocking on my door afterwards. MI5 uses it. The Navy SEALs use it. Mossad uses it. It's being used all over the. Improv is one of the most
Yeah.
incredible life skills you can have, and I bring applied improv into the work that I do with kids. Life is a long form improv, and when you can learn that skill of improv, no matter what comes your way, like we did with this imaginary workshop with Jack, when maybe they're milking the cow and the milk goes. I don't really know where I'm going with that, but you get
Yeah,
my point.
yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
I had to improv my way out of that one. Um,
You're like,
but then
stop talking. I don't know anything about cows.
no, I don't know. Oh my God, the other, like whatever, the other, the other. But the whole point is with these fields constantly cross pollinating. Again, parents are, what do you want to do? I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer. In fact, working with kids on their essays, very often this happens. What is it that you hope to major in or study at school? Now, very often some kids are very, very clear on what it is that they want to do, but often when kids hit that roadblock, I don't know. I don't know what it is that I want to do. And I don't know. And just freezing like a deer in the headlights isn't a good place to land. This is true for people who are on stages as well. But I don't know, but I'm dying to find out is a fantastic answer. I don't know, but I'm dying to find out on
Mm,
my own. I don't know, but I'm dying to find out with others. I don't know because here's what I know I don't know, and here's what I don't know that I don't know. That's music
yeah.
to the ears of anybody. That's music to the
Yeah.
ears of
Even having
clinicians.
that level of awareness, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because it's that level of, I know I would keep saying we talked about this in Boston. When I lived in Japan, when I went to Japan on what was supposed to be a 3-month research fellowship, and I ended up spending 4 years for reasons
Yeah.
not important to go into here. But I woke up every day realizing I knew less, and it was a huge thrill for me.
Mm,
Every day, and this is my life's work. I will never retire. I was fortunate enough to be asked to speak at my beloved alma mater at Penn and Wharton about a year and a half ago. And my classmates came up and they said, loving what you're doing so much. When are you going to retire? And I said, let's see, it's Saturday at 2. Never. Why would I ever retire? I learn more every day. I learn from my mentees. They learn from me. This is my life's work. I'll probably do a little bit less one-to-one work and more other kinds of things. But I learned from my mentees. Again, I'm older, I'm not wiser. This is a pay it forward mentorship program. My kids are absolutely brilliant. And it's not just the kids in my tribe. Look at Jack. I mean, I've never met him, but that whole rabbit holing into the world of farming, right? So what that he doesn't like things that other kids normally like. He's already got a PhD in that already, right? He just printed that on his own. And giving I think a lot of kids feel they need permission. I referred to that young lady I was working with before. She came and she said, Dan, can I mix classical music with game music? You can do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
And this comes back to your question about parents and that tension in between. I
Mm.
think that in this world, kids sort of need that permission to go ahead. Look, this comes back to that question of things that we are terrified of. There are going to be things that happen. Applying to college is a terrifying thing. Asking somebody out on a date can be a terrifying thing. Signing up for an expensive mentorship program or anything, applying for a job can be a terrifying thing. But leaning into the things that we are most terrified of is one of the greatest things you can ever do. Because one way or the other, it's coming for you. And one of two things will
Yeah.
happen. It's either as terrifying as you thought it was going to be, or it's not. But reaching into it head on builds that confidence. And
I love it. I love it. Absolutely
there you
brilliant.
go. Just like we
Magic.
practice this, right, man? Just like we practice, people out there, dear viewers, we practiced every word of this, and it feels
You're right.
it feels almost like we did, right? That's the beauty of improv.
Yeah, this is like I always say this. I'm like a one since I had kids. I'm like a one-hit wonder. It's like a one take done. I logged on. I was feeding children 44 seconds before we went live. And
I'm just going to do a
done.
public service announcement. Mae Ferguson is just on the scale of 1 to 10 awesome. She's a 200. I can't say them great things
Thank you.
about
You're so sweet. You're so sweet. Right. So business end of the conversation. So how can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out? So, maybe just drop the word interested down below if you're watching this as a live stream,
Yeah,
and or shoot me a DM or whatever, or connect with Dan. We'll tag him up obviously in all of these videos.
Sure.
But how can people reach out from you apart from that?
Sure. They can either reach out to me directly at Dan at Elite Student Coach, ELITE Student Coach, Dan at Elite Student Coach, or you can visit my website, elitestudentcoach.com. There's a very brief application form, and we can go from there. Those are the two ways. And one way or the other, I would love to be of service. If you're not a great fit for my program or I for you, I'll point you in the right direction. But one way or the other, I'm very grateful, Maeve, my friend, to you for having me on. And I'm grateful to the people who have spent time today. I hope this has been helpful for them. There's no one way to do it. Again, the only wrong way to do it is the same way that everybody else is doing it. Just remain in motion, have some faith, and have some fun. I'll finish with this.
Sleepwalking through life is not the way to do this. So
yeah, no, and the last comment I'll make, and this is a really important thing. I think fun and play has been slowly kind of sucked out of the educational process. I think, I don't think this is a fault. I'm not laying blame on the American or some of the other countries' educational process. It's just this has been removed. And when kids have fun and realize there are no mistakes, these are learning opportunities. Every mistake is an opportunity to like have another victory. It just completely reframes the problem. Look at little kids. When little kids are playing, they're constantly reinventing. Never lose that spirit, that ABC. Always be curious. So
fabulous. Right. Thank you so much, Dan. Take care and great to have
Thank
you
you
on.
much.
Chat to you soon.